Hello and welcome to the Car, Sim and Race Driver Show. And we have a very special guest this week. Now, I know I say that every time I do a show, but this is for absolute sure, for the third time, a hat-trick of invites and a hat-trick of coming along. It is Josh Martin. Good to see you, Josh.
I'm doing good. How are you?
Very well indeed. I hope that intro worked. I'm not sure if it actually went live or not, but hopefully people who are watching can let me know in the comments if it's all working well. Josh, I'm thinking where to start. You've had an amazing summertime. You're in there working hard for the SimGrid. So let us know. I think the last time we spoke to you, it was about end of March, April time. And there was lots of things happening that we hadn't really heard about the SimGrid. But now it kind of exploded onto the scene. What is your summertime, or from April onwards, what have you been doing? What's been happening?
Yeah, I've been quite busy. I think obviously first we had the SRO Esports Series, so I was competing in that with Team Parker Racing, one of the Bentley customer teams, which was awesome. That took me through to about sort of June, July time. Then it was a bit more quiet periods. I was doing some work with the SimGrid and David Perel, which I'm sure we'll come back to. And then most recently, it's the Ferrari Esports Series. First round was last weekend, and we're getting ready to go racing again this weekend.
Fantastic. And so, because you're now doing a lot of work for the SimGrid with David Perel, and how do you find all of that? Because I mean, it's just taken the sim racing community by storm. So what's your kind of main role with all of that?
Yeah, so my role at the SimGrid is kind of with the commercial side. So anytime there's an advertisement or some kind of sponsor awareness, that's kind of my role in the background, is just making sure that all looks pretty, that everyone's happy and that kind of stuff. But you're right, it's been an awesome explosion. Working with David's obviously great fun. With his experience in the real world and mine in the sim world, we kind of have got a great synergy, and we've been able to develop a great platform. And I think you're right, yeah, with COVID and the resurgence of motorsport, we're really finding the growth and drive within the platform, which is awesome.
Yeah, because David was saying last week that he hopes that people will be able to come into sim racing who are keen motorsport fans, and they get themselves a sim rig and they start to practice and join the sim rig and start doing the races, and hopefully eventually can get good enough that they can compete in the top echelons of the championship in the series, and then potentially go on to maybe even a real race drive, so if they go and get sponsorship and so on and so forth. How do you see that coming about? Do you think over the next few years it will just continue to grow, and then maybe perhaps a big sponsor might come in and there could be a race seat available?
Yeah, I think you're right. It is definitely growing in that direction. We ran a series recently, the More Female Racer series, which I know you had Taya on the channel, for example.
Yeah.
And that was a great series because we had female and male racers taking part, but a lot of the females were people new to sim racing. We had people that were using like their brothers or their dad's rig to get in the seat, do some racing, and then got hooked on the bug. So hopefully we'll see that continue out. We've got some plans for season 2 for that, which will hopefully be coming out soon. And yeah, I'd love to be able to reward someone with a seat, whether that's a test day or a full season. It'd be awesome to see.
That would be something else. I mean, because that's kind of, I think, every motorsport enthusiast's dream. And I'm sure every kind of sim racer that, at the moment, you might not be in a position to do motor racing properly in terms of a real physical kind of seat and drive, but you can have a go and get better and better. And if you can show that potential, you could actually be doing something. And I kind of joke because I run a little white Dacia, probably the cheapest car on the market. But I thought, if you put the 1.2 turbo petrol engine, it is a Renault turbocharged 3-cylinder that you can get for them. They're only about 7,995, and I thought maybe you could take all it, kind of relieve it of all its kind of weight, put in some racing brakes and a roll cage, and then there you have it. You've got a very cheap budget kind of racing series that you could do for probably about 10 grand a year, but including the car. And if you write it off, you just buy another one. So it's not that big a deal. But it's only another 8 grand to get one.
Well, this is it. Yourself, we're all passionate car fans, and I think within obviously the bounds of the legal limits of the road and stuff, if there's an opportunity to kind of push a car to its limits, then we all enjoy it. So I think if we get someone in a Ferrari GT3 car, awesome. If it's a low budget Citroen C1 race car, it's still racing. So I'm sure they'd love it.
And I think it still gives that proper kind of thing. You can say I'm a racing driver.
Exactly.
When you go on a date, it kind of definitely helps. When you can say, "What do you do?" Well, I'm a racing driver. But then they see your car outside there. It's an Akadol Citroen C1. But it's like, you have to say, "Mind the roll cage, love." So it's like, But no, that sounds amazing. But and of course, the SimGrid, for people who aren't maybe not quite so aware of it, it uses ACC, doesn't it? Kind of a Assetto Corsa competition. and it kind of, it's mainly GT3 racing, I think, from that, isn't it? Or I know they've got the new GT4 races, but I think it's going to mainly be on the GT3. Do you think it will expand into other categories as well, or are you quite happy with the way it is at the moment?
With regards to the sim grid, do you mean? Or
yeah, the sim grid. Sorry, yes.
I think for sure we've obviously at the moment we found a really good foothold in ACC. David's got a really good relationship with the devs. I've got a great relationship with some of the marketing team, and I think GT3 cars teach you a lot about how to drive. They're not like Formula cars, which are all about going really fast, late braking, and then back on the power. GT3s are more about keeping the minimum speed up. So we find in terms of teaching people to drive, they're a really great opportunity. And even the GT4s, which we did with the More Female Racer series, was again just getting people up to speed so that they can be competitive just against each other, and with time they can be against, like you said, the upper echelons of sim racing. So I'd love to see us expand if we will at some point move into different games and stuff like that. But I think once the community feels that it's got the most out of ACC, that's when we'll be looking outside. We want to make sure we're obviously serving them as well as we can.
Yeah. And I mean, what's been quite fun is that I was doing Brands Hatch on ACC yesterday, and I tried a whole number of different cars because I've been watching Thea, and I think I did a 25.8 in the Aston, either the Aston or the Bentley, I can't quite remember. And I thought that was, I knew there was more time in it, but I knew that maybe my setup probably wasn't the best it could be. And of course, for the sim grid, you can buy the setups. So do you have now that available? I know you're launching new cars all the time, but would you say the setup is a major improvement? If you get the right setup, it will work on a track like Brands Hatch, and you can maybe take an extra 1 or 2 seconds off just by having a car that works.
Yeah, 100%. We the setups were designed basically for people who don't have a lot of time to sim race but do enjoy it. So the idea is that if you purchase these setups at the Coach Dave Academy, they'll give you a better understanding of how to make a stable car that can also reward you with lap time. And I use them quite often, and I know a lot of other guys that use them as kind of foundation, and they're a great product that really make you competitive from the outset. So if anyone's kind of struggling, I definitely advocate that you kind of have a look at them and see if they can help.
Yeah, because I'm just trying to think how much they cost to buy a setup, for example, like a Porsche. Is the Porsche one out now? I know you've done most of them, but how much are they roughly for a sim grid setup?
So the setup packs are about $25 plus VAT per car, and that will give you, say you pick the Bentley, that will give you all the Bentley tracks, that will give you a qualifying and a race setup for each track. So basically you can go racing anywhere for any length of time and you'll be sorted. That's
really good. So what is the difference? Now here's a question we might get. If you're on a standard safe setup on ACC, the car tends to understeer quite a lot, especially that's around some of the further corners of Brands Hatch. What would a good setup do? Does it just give you more confidence, or does it just turn in a bit better? Is it a bit steadier under braking? What would be the kind of difference that people would see with a good setup?
That's a really good question. I think that the setups have been, the amount of hours I'd say there's probably about 40 or 50 hours per car per track combo that go into the setups, and the setups themselves aren't necessarily the secret sauce to make you the super fast guy in sim racing, but they, like you said, they kind of increase that range of what a stable setup will do. So like you say, no longer will you be understeering and then sliding all over the place. It'll kind of bring that range back in so the car's planted and stable and quick. Particularly for like endurance races as well, it can be quite nice on the tires, which, as I'm sure you know, when it comes to endurance racing, if you can manage your fuel and tires, you're going to gain massively. And that's kind of the ethos that we've built with these setups, is that they're for people to make sure they're competitive for as long as they need to be.
Yeah. Because that's the thing. I mean, I was watching a lot of your races earlier on in the year when you were doing that series of about 6 or 7 races earlier on. And I almost thought, can I actually watch you? Because every time I watched you, you had a great start. You make up about 10 places on the first couple up. And I was just saying, please don't crash, please don't crash. And then literally there'd be someone else would kind of fly off the track, and you'd be the only one just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Especially, I remember at Nürburgring and things like that. But you were very good at coming through the field and very, very competitive. What do you think has given you that kind of competitive edge? Because last week you beat David Perel at Monza. I'm sure as he's your boss, he's not going to be. You might be on a few warnings after that if you keep beating him. What do you think gives you that edge in being able to drive well and make up the places?
Yeah, I think the SRO is probably the best example, like you say. So at Nürburgring with a Bentley, there was Will Daniels, who's also been on your show. I'm talking about loads of people, and they've all been on your show, which is awesome. So Will Daniels has been helping me with the engineer work, and we were doing probably 5-6 hours a day, developing the setup, making tweaks to make sure that it was operating as well as possible. That combined with the fact that I've been upgrading my sim rig this year, so PlaySeat sent me one of their Evolution seats out, which is awesome. I've got the triple monitors as well now, and that in combination with the car setup and the track time really meant that I was just able to feel the car a lot more and understand from a technical side what was giving me the advantage. And like you say, we had a great start, and despite the damage, once we came back out, even with changing conditions, the car was quick enough to take on the top 10 and the top 5 guys. So a combination of all those things really are what gave me the confidence to kind of push my sim racing this year.
Yeah. Now, I'm quite sure we can just see a little bit of the back of that sim rig there. And I actually used a copy of your photograph in the introduction there, which I think
I noticed, yeah.
So but it does look absolutely amazing with the 3 screen. Is that a 3 screen or is it a curved screen? Because it's typical.
It's 27-inch screens, yeah.
Yeah, which is, I mean, so how do you find having something like that compared to a normal single screen kind of setup? Is that what you had before, or was it? Are you used to that kind of setup now?
I originally started with like an old TV just hanging on a monitor stand, and the whole 3 screens versus 1 screen debate is one that could take hours. David is strongly against 3 screens, whereas I'm all for them. I think, for me, it gives me that immersion of being actually in the cockpit, and like my peripheral vision is a bit better. Whereas some people say that you just need to have an understanding of the car and that should be enough. So it's a trick. I don't really know what your thoughts on it are, though.
I have to say that looks really, really good. I've just got one fairly big screen, but my screen's too far away from my machine, my sim rig. To be fair, I need it a lot closer. But the way my office is set up, I'm not even a racing driver, and I'm giving you very poor racing driver excuses. But it was but yes, everything's wrong. My car's filled up with diesel. But But no, I mean, I think the peripheral vision thing is definitely true, because you do see a bit more around you, and that gives you maybe a better feel of the car. And so I think that would be. I mean, I've played them before. I did it in a Renault last year at Silverstone. They had a proper full motion simulator, and it had 3 screens like that, and it was really good because you could see all round about. The only problem with the motion sensors was it was a Renault Megane 280. Because we've been driving one in the morning, and then we got to go on this simulator. It was rolling about so much. I thought, this car is not going to be on 2 wheels going around a corner at Silverstone. I'm not or whatever, but it wouldn't be quite as bad as that. So it felt that it was on too much of a motion. But no, I think the 3 screens for me, I think that would look amazing. And I think if it gives you the feel of being in a real race and just gives you that little bit more vision to see where people are, then that's probably quite a good thing. So how do you find? I mean, because obviously you've got lots of friends and associates all in sim racing. Do you find that you all go for a particular type of design, or is it so varied that everyone's got something different?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both, really. I think a lot of it's down to personal preference. Some of it's obviously going to be dictated by kind of commercial partnerships, like I've got with PlaySeat and Frostmaster. But I think ultimately something that's kind of fun about this, and for people who maybe don't understand sim racing, is that you can have any configuration and you can still have fun. It doesn't matter whether it's 3 screens, 1 screen, it's your mate's TV that you borrowed. It's all about just getting the opportunity to drive cars and tracks that you've never driven before, and providing people that didn't have the budgets to go racing the opportunity to race. It's good.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I was going to say, one of the things I've noticed is coming from doing a lot of console racing, and also my main racing is on PS4. But now with ACC, it's quite good, because the more practice I do on that, I can get better. So when I get my ACC on my PC eventually, I can be hopefully as competitive as it was on console. And it seems to be quite realistic the way that the two are, the way that they drive and so on. But when I've done a lot of ACC racing and trying to build up my kind of career on that, and then I go over to Gran Turismo, and seem to be much better on Gran Turismo. And I just wondered, I'm trying to think as to why that might be. And I don't want to put you in the dark, but do you think is a kind of, if once you learn to go fairly quick on that game, that makes you a bit quicker on other games? Or maybe it's because they don't have, you don't have lines, you don't have cones and everything else. But do you think there's the ACC, because it's more focused, if you get good at that, it might help with other games.
I don't think you're wrong. Like I was kind of touching on earlier, I think ACC is a great tool to teach people how to drive properly. So the beautiful thing about ACC is the model of the tires is really well. So if you are turning too quickly into a corner and the car is understeering and the tires are scrubbing, you're going to feel that response for the car. And if you learn to control that, but still get the turn in and still be quick whilst protecting the tires, those are techniques you can take into other games, which will then make you quicker. So it could just be, I think in your case, it's probably you've got so much time on GT Sport, you know tricks about the game that other people might not. But I think you may have learned some driving techniques from ACC and be able to implement them as well.
Yeah, I certainly think, because you have to then go with your own. The only explanation I can come up with is in terms of, I think you have to look where your braking points are in ACC. You don't get a cone or that kind of thing to help you. Well, on GT Sport, you can have all that there, and it kind of gives you a better idea. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I was in the Group 4 at Suzuka last night, and I'll just do some time trial, and I managed a 208.6 in the Audi TT, which is only about, it was just about 1.3 or 1.4 off the top 10 time, which is not too bad for that. And I think the best time was like a 206.9. So it's kind of getting towards, I thought, well, I'm not miles away, you know. And I felt there was definitely time in it. And it was funny because I was struggling for a while. So, right, I'll go and do more ACC and just practice on that, and then come back and have another go. But I do find the GT3 cars a lot harder to drive than GT4. I think there's so much more power, and the cars respond quite differently. You've got to be a lot smoother. And I think with GT4 cars, you can throw them about a wee bit more, and you kind of get away with it. But what's your favourite combination of racing cars?
I think in ACC, it's definitely got to be the GT3s. I think because I've spent so much time in them, and particularly with the Bentley, which was at one point the slowest car in the SRO series, having slogged it out in that and worked with Will so hard on it, I've kind of fallen in love with the car afterwards. And it's a really good endurance car, so that kind of comes in handy. But saying that, all the GT3 cars are fun in that game, and with the right setup, they can be also rewarding, which is awesome.
Yeah, the Bentley's nice, and it's quite a stable car, isn't it? It seems to be
exactly, yeah.
Stable, which is nice, and yet for a big, because it's a big heavy beast in real life. From everything to get it down to fit all the regulations and things like that. But no, it's a nice car. It makes a nice noise. And
definitely,
well, that kind of thing. So, what kind of circuits as well? I don't know with your series that you're doing, especially with the female series. They did a lot of fantastic tracks like Kyalami and all over the place. And I've just got the update, so I can do Kyalami now. What are the tips for tracks like that? Or if you're starting on a new track, what's the best way to to get up to speed with that?
I think for anybody that's new to a circuit or new to a simulator in general, it's start your first 5 to 10 laps should all be at basically a quarter speed. I think taking your time to go out the pits, learn about visual reference points for the circuit. Is there a change of color of tarmac? Is there a cone? Is there a marshal? Is there something standing? And then from building up slowly and slowly, you can kind of build these reference points as you get faster and faster. And it gets to the point where your advantage is, if it goes from night to day or day to night, it goes from sun to wet or whatever the case is, because your track knowledge is so strong, those reference points will stay no matter how much the scenery changes, if that makes sense. And I think that really helps people get up to speed and be competitive, because too many people just come flying out at 100 miles an hour. They're braking all over the place. They're building up time, but they're not being as productive as they could be.
Yeah. I think because that's the first thing. I mean, I know that's what I tried last night at Kyalami. I made the first 3 or 4 corners at a reasonable rate, and then I thought, hang on, there's a lot of blind corners. You just don't see where it goes, and especially at the top of the track. And then you come in and you think, hang on, where's my turning point? And it was almost impossible.
Exactly.
You got to go slower to kind of learn where you can then turn the car and get into the right bend properly. And then because if you don't, you get onto all the rubbery bits where all the kind of all the tire cutoffs and so on, isn't it? So you don't want to be offline. But it looks like a great fun track, actually. I thought I need to practice that one. And also tips for Zandvoort, because it's quite a challenging circuit. Is that one that you've done a bit of as well? Because that's on. I've seen races, a lot of GT3 races there.
It's actually the one for this Sunday in the Ferrari Hublot Series series. So I've been learning to do Zandvoort properly, and it's a real roller coaster of a circuit, very bumpy, a lot of elevation changes, and a lot of the corners have got blind apexes as well. So you're kind of turning in and hoping that the car is going to stick. With a circuit like that, it's all about building it up slowly, getting a feel for the car, and then pushing the boundaries every so often, but reeling it back once you find that upper limit. I think particularly this Sunday, we're probably going to see a lot of drivers who are under pressure and going to be pushing quite hard, and we'll probably see quite a few mistakes because of that.
Yeah, it's got some quite kind of, I know when I was driving, I only did it very briefly. The funny thing was, I think it was a glitch on my ACC when I went on the multiplayer, because I'll just try and see it. And I went to join the multiplayer lobby, and I didn't realize that it somehow allowed me to join at the end of a race, and they were still going. And it was a complete, I don't know how I managed it, because there I was, I thought, oh, it must be a qualifying. So I didn't look at the session, and I just ventured out. And all they must have seen me crawling out of the track, moving around there, you see, and then they're all flying past me, and goodness knows how many accidents I caused. They were all trying to avoid me on the whole thing, and I honestly didn't have a clue that it was a race, because normally you have to wait till the qualifying's over, and then it allows you to join the main race. So it must have been some odd glitch that I thought I better leave this lobby straight away, because they're not going to want to see if they find my number and my name. That'll be it. So, and but that was the one. But no, I'll have to say I do love ACC, because it's just got the realism and the noise. The noise on the engines is great.
Yeah,
it really kind of sticks with you, and you can have great fun trying to do it. Because I've been doing my gaming night, the Fat Man in a Cheap Sim on a Monday night. And although I've only done GT Sport so far, I'm going to do an ACC night as well, which should be quite fun. And then we can see how it goes. So, as you do all these different races, how do you find that you approach all of that? Because sometimes they're at weekends, sometimes they're during the week. Do you have a kind of plan as to how much practice that you do, or how does it work for you?
Yeah, so I'm very fortunate because I work with David at the Sim Grid. It means there's a bit more of an understanding, I suppose, about my, I guess, semi-professional hobby, if you want to call it that, sim racing in general. And so for myself, it's a lot about finding that right balance. I've got a really supportive partner, Ainsley, who is, she's all for, like for this Ferrari series, pushing me super hard to make sure I'm practicing. And I think regardless of the series, the game, whatever it is, it's about just committing even 2 or 3 hours a day makes all the difference. Because I remember at Silverstone, for example, it was the first time I'd driven it competitively, was in SRO. And the first day I was like 4 seconds off the pace. And then the second day I was 2 seconds. And then it was slowly falling. And it was just a case of being able to go to bed at night, think about the lines, and then getting up the next day and trying something different. I'm sure you're the same, Hugh, when it comes to GT Sport or whatever the case is. Sometimes you just need to take a step back to then go forward.
Aye. It's harder for me to convince my wife, mind you, to say I'm working there. More games, and she just looks and tuts and walks away. It's like, but no, I see what you mean, because it is, you have to. If you go too much into it and you're not getting anywhere, then you just get frustrated. So you have to kind of take a step back. I think, okay, right, I must be able to either brake in too late, or I'm putting the car under too much pressure, and I need to just slow it down a little bit. And then you find there's a bit more time. And there's also things like brake balance. And that's the only really thing you can change in Gran Turismo, is more the brake balance and traction control and things like that, which is quite good, because then it means that you don't have people with a setup advantage.
Sure.
It's quite good that way. But no, so I used the Audi TT, for example, at Suzuka last night in GT4, and I put the drive all the way to the plus to the rear. And that makes it a bit more adjustable for a front drive car. And I had a great run. I just seemed to be able to use the curbs, and that was working quite well. And that's what took the time off. Now, you've done a little bit of work with Gran Turismo. I know it's not something you've really done a lot with. Do you think you'll do more in the near future?
As much as I'd love to, I don't think it's something on the horizon. I was really lucky. I was obviously doing some commercial work for that, which I can't talk about yet, but hopefully we'll be able to soon. But I think, it's a great platform, and it's really good to see how competitive as well. There's a lot of guys I know who are racing in it, obviously yourself and David, but there's other guys right the way through up. And if I didn't realize the amount of, or the lack of setup work you could do, which makes it all the more impressive, I think, because then it's a lot more about being able to feel the car, being able to push the limits and learn the nuances of the game to be as quick as possible. So it's a great platform, but I think my heart's sold to ACC at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely understandable. When you're brought up with something and you put so much effort into it, that's your kind of
exactly right
kind of racing kind of experience. And it is a great game, and I can see why you're addicted to it, because it is so good. Any chance to have a shot and to have a go would be absolutely something. Now, this is a question that we always ask our guests on the show. If you could have any road car, from obviously your experience of driving all these racing cars, all these lovely cars, what would it be?
My ideal road car, right? So does it have to be a race car, or can we go any car at all?
It could be any car at all. What would you like?
You know, I would probably go down the route of a Lexus LFA. I think they're quite aggressive looking. They're obviously, I think every time they sold one, Lexus sold one, they actually lost money on the car. But it's the chassis looks really stable on it. It looks like quite a fun car. I think something like that, but that noise would be my my ideal car.
I was just actually watching a program of that the other day. It was like Martin's Best Moments or something, and he was driving the LFA with James May, and that was quite a machine. So it sounds like a Formula One car, really. It's
exactly right.
The engine sounds phenomenal. So now that's the one to put for David Perel. This is your company car list.
I wish.
You know, I needed to travel around Telford, but whatever it might be, or London and so on. No, that would be quite a thing. But now we've got a couple of questions. I was going to say, for all the people who are watching just now, make sure you've got your questions in, and we'll ask Josh the questions that you've got. Now, one of my co-hosts has said to me here, now what has he said? Instead of Fat Man in a cheap slim, it's going to be soon to be a slim sim in a fat shed. So he's turned it all around. But I might be the other thing I was going to try and get was an outside room, you see, so I could have all of that, have a bit more space, have a little studio as well. So when people come, we can actually interview them in person, and it looks like it's got a nice backdrop and that kind of stuff. So that will hopefully be in the plans for the years to come. But so how do you find? Obviously, you've put on these big races, big championships. Have you had quite good viewing numbers? Because certainly looking at it from YouTube's point of view, it seems to be doing pretty well.
Yeah, the SimGrid has really exploded. For a company that's less than 6 months old, we're now pushing, I think it's upwards of 1 million impressions now for 2020. We've got just over 2,000 subscribers, and I think 5,000 members across the website and the Discord server. So I think because people are seeing it's a great platform, and there's plenty of opportunities for people to come and race regardless of their ability, we're really seeing a great uptake, which is awesome. We've also got some really big names going to be joining us for the next few races. I can't announce those just yet, but some world champions might be on the horizon potentially, or their teams. So hopefully, as the platform continues to grow, we'll continue to see the uptake in members and all this kind of stuff. We've just quickly, we had Chaz Draycott, who's one of our lead commentators, was at the Nürburgring 24-hour and actually commentating on the real race, which is awesome to see. The fact that we're able to pull in such great talent to provide not only sim racers with a great product, but anyone who watches motorsport will now recognize that voice.
Yeah. I know that is something, because I know that, was it Jimmy Broadbent recently got on to Top Gear? I think I saw a video saying he'd been, I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, I mean, that, which is amazing when you think that these YouTubers and sim racers are managing to get all over the place and doing all of that. And the commentary is high quality, to be fair, for the events. I've always been very impressed by how it all works and how they know their stuff. They can remember because your grids are huge grids. They're like don't they, or more. It's quite something. I thought it was hard when I did a test one with about 15 cars on it. I had to write everything down separately beforehand and have it next to me so I could have an idea who it was and not just call out the numbers. So no, it's great to see the quality that's going into it. And I really hope you're able to monetize it, because something like the SimGrid, I think, would be an amazing scheme. As people join it, I think people would be potentially prepared to pay something to be part of that and to see a real, especially when you're looking at the kind of prizes potential that could be awarded out of that. Now, what would you like to do in terms of once the COVID thing hopefully clears? Do you have, would there be an event that you think would be a great one to start, that would maybe doing it at a racetrack or something like that? What would be your ideal combination or event you would like to put on?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's obviously one that we're always very aware of, is that once COVID lifts, we may have to start looking at the live event avenue. I think for now we've obviously got a great platform in the virtual world. We've got such a wide and diverse kind of ecosystem of staff members. So we've got people who are pro commentators right through to junior, just like we've got pro drivers through to junior drivers. So I think if the opportunity comes up to obviously work with a series or a manufacturer to do some live event stuff, that would be awesome. But I think we need to make sure that we time it right as to not kind of lose focus of the SimGrid platform. And maybe it's about finding that right balance, having some live events with online elements and vice versa. But I mean, in a dream world, I'd love to be able to provide for F1 esports. I think that'd be awesome if the SimGrid could facilitate that, but probably wishful thinking at this stage.
Oh, that's the thing. I'm going to come back to you on that because I've got a funny question for you with one of the things that you set up a wee while ago. Now, we've got a question from Andrew Marr, who's one of my co-hosts. He said, what's the secret to setting up a car in Assetto Corsa?
Well, it's there's quite a wide variety. So I think a lot of it depends on your driving style. For example, in the Ferrari esports, we've got drivers who are setting the cars up to drive like a go-kart. They're very rear end dependent. So as soon as you press the throttle, the rear end's sliding about and you kind of keep it on that balance. We've got people who are playing it really safe and the car doesn't really move too much, but it's, you know, more stable in the corners. So a lot of it is driving style is really just the secret, I guess. As long as, you know, your tires are in the right pressure zone and you're not spinning out, I guess, as long as you're doing those two things, the setup's okay.
Yeah. No, that's so I mean, that's the thing, because you need to be a good driver to get a good setup as well, isn't it? Because if you're going to be pushing too hard, regardless of how you change the car, it's either it might work well for a lap or two, but then if you're too hard on it, you're still going to go through your tires and everything else. So no, it's good to know. Now, one of the questions I had before was I visited Brooklands after I remember watching your video with Chris Hay when you set up the sim center there, and it is impressive. Now, to anyone watching, you need to go to Brooklands because it really is. It's a phenomenal place. The museum, the cars, they've even got the showroom there, so you can go and see all the cars. And you can go and buy one at the end of it. When you go up to the SimGrid, it is the simulator center. It is amazing. You've got the Formula 1 simulators, then you've got the GT3 simulators. My question is, I can see that you picked Project Cars 2 as the kind of the simulator to use there. What was the reason behind Project Cars 2? That was the most appropriate one.
Yeah, I need to be kind of careful. I guess that, you know, Project Cars 2, for as much bashing as it gets, is quite a decent platform. You know, it's by no means a simulator, but it's kind of on that fringe of like being accessible to the everyday person, but also for someone, you know, like you or me who enjoys sim racing. So in terms of like the user interface and being able to pick your car and pick your track, it's really friendly in terms of that. There's not much that can go wrong with it technically. And it also gives you enough of an experience to feel like, okay, this GT3 car handles different to this Mercedes G-Wagon Jeep, for example. So a lot of the reasoning was behind that. There was also, like, you know, the business commercial side of stuff that kind of dictated it. But I think it's quite a fun platform and quite enjoyable. What was your experience like? Did you enjoy it when you went along?
It was funny because I went with my other co-host Jonathan, and I was saying, right, I'm going to beat this guy, no problem at all on this game. I know Project Cars because I played the first one really well, and I did actually have Project Cars 2, but I never really played it. And I was expecting the graphics and the feel of Project Cars 1 roughly, or I thought, maybe it'll be like GT Sport in some ways. And of course, I think it was Silverstone that they had it at, and I think it was a GT3 AMG Mercedes Group 3 car, I think it was, that we had chosen to go around. And I came on the first straight, I think the old start finish straight. And you go into, is it Cops Corner? I think it is. Is it the first? Cops Corner?
Yeah.
And I didn't manage to turn right. I just managed to turn right. And John went all the way around and he laughed in my face as he said, "Oh, I thought you were good at this, Hugh." So that was me, and I blamed the car and Project Cars too. But it was, but no, it was. I mean, because it's quite a hard something on that setup. The GT3 cars, they were tough to drive. They weren't just you couldn't just flick it in. You had to be quite careful as to how it all worked. But no, to be fair, after a while, we kind of got used to it. But it's quite different to ACC, and it's very different to GT Sport. But I have to say, the Formula 1 game, because I drove that one as well. And I was used to that game, and that they were kind of a little bit easier, because F1 cars, all the downforce, it's so much easier to chuck the car in. Because you've done quite a bit of both. I've seen you race single seaters and GT3 and GT, those kind of cars. What's your preference? Because you're very good at both. Can you see yourself going down one line more in particular, or are you quite happy to do both?
I mean, first of all, that's very kind of you to say. But I think, I started playing the F1 games, and I love open wheelers. I think the fact that you can be so fast and just, as late on the brakes as you dare to get past the next guy is an experience that I think is enjoyable, regardless of the car and circuit. Saying that, I've spent so much time with ACC and GT3 cars now that I'm finding myself more competitive in GT3 cars than I am in open wheelers, which is a shame because I'd rather it was the other way around. But I think, yeah, my preference will always be F1 or open wheel, but I'm quicker in GT3. So it's kind of a tricky situation.
Yeah, I know it's great fun watching you do both, and you're competitive in both. And I love open wheel racing as well. And recently I did an interview with Snail Racing, and she's on the Central Belt, and she's very funny. She does a great videos, great channel to watch. And because she's very new to the sport, she's only been doing it for about 6 months. But she did what they call the skippies, or the skip barbers, which are single seater racing. And I have to say, I was quite motivated when I watched that. I thought, I've got to have a go. It looks incredible. A big motivation to get this PC sorted out so I can actually have a go, because they've got a bit of downforce, but not a huge amount. And you find that they go around a fast corner, they kind of bite in a little bit, and then all of a sudden you feel the car losing grip and it's beginning to oversteer. So it's quite fun. You know, it looks really good to play, and you have that more of a lightness in the car, isn't it, when you're in a
exactly.
Well, the GT cars are quite heavy. But no, that's quite a thing. Now we've got another question here. It says, when you started e-racing, seriously, did you switch to left foot braking? And how long did it take to get used to it?
So a little bit of history. I started sim racing before I learned how to drive. So for me, I started Thrustmaster when they first sponsored me, sent me the F1 wheel, like the Ferrari F1 wheel, plus a 2-pedal set. So I didn't know anything other than left foot braking when I started. And so in terms of how long did it take me to get used to it, it literally just came as kind of naturally, I guess. The tricky issue being then, when I got into my first road car to do my driving lessons, the driving instructor nearly went through the front windscreen. So it's, I've been quite lucky in that regard, I guess. And it's a really good skill to get used to. Anyone who doesn't use it already, definitely spend some time doing it. I remember I was at Paul Ricard, actually, the circuit with Blancpain for their preseason testing, and we had a couple of the guys come down on the simulator and stuff like that. And Roman Monti, who drives, I think he drives for Bentley now, or it might have been Lamborghini at the time, he'd right foot brakes, and it was just so alien to me seeing someone go from the throttle to the brake and then back to the throttle, you know?
Yeah, that is something. I mean, the old days, we used to see it more kind of in rallying and stuff, you know, when they be heel and toe and the whole thing and everything's going
of course,
trying to do it. But no, I think for racing, isn't it? The good thing is the simulators are set up. Some of them do. Some, I mean, like my G29 comes with a clutch pedal, but I never ever use it. So it is pretty good. But I know, as you say, if you've been brought up on that, I would have loved to have seen your overtaking maneuvers. By the way, when the driving instructor tells you, right, you need to get ready, you know.
That's it. Yeah.
You know, which move did you use? Was it the kind of Alonso style inches off the top, you know, and scaring the life out of anyone in front? But that's always the best way to do it, I think. But you know, how did you find? Obviously, if you've done all your driving on sim racing and then jumping into a normal, was it probably a Vauxhall Corsa or a Ford Fiesta or something like that? How did you find all of that?
It was pretty straightforward, I guess. Like, it's, I don't know. I mean, you've been driving so long, and so have I. And I mean, it's I don't know. It just kind of, you go with it, I guess. There's I don't know what to. Yeah, exactly. But just when you were talking about that, like I remember watching like Colin McRae and, like you're saying, all these rally videos, and just like seeing their footwork, it's just so mesmerizing watching them just basically dance, isn't it? They're dancing the car. It's so cool to see.
It's like a good drummer. You know, I play drums, but I'm just a kind of amateur, do it for fun. But the guys that can do all the things, it's all syncopated, and you know, the feet are going at different times the whole time.
Exactly.
And that's what they're able to do, and they make it look like some kind of dance, as you say, and their rhythm, and they can just see so far ahead. I think the rally drivers are just incredible how they manage to do it, because they go so fast through the woods, and it's something else. But we get a little taste of that when the Jim Clark Rally comes up every year. Of course, they do all of that locally. And we've had some pretty good cars and good classes, and they race through the town centre, which is always good fun to see as well. Here's the thing from Andrew Marr. He was saying Alex Zanardi didn't left foot brake when he came to Formula One, but he had to learn. But I think someone coming into F1, they would kind of be used to. I know that Martin Brundle, he couldn't left foot brake after the accident that he had, and he struggled with his foot to do it. But I think now all that's what they all do, isn't it? For years and years, that's how they've been managing it.
Because was it David Coulthard that had he still had a clutch pedal in his F1 car a lot later than everyone else? I think it was in one of his final seasons. I'm sure there was something. I can't remember, but
because all of them were used to that, because it was quite late when they actually when the cars became just two pedals, and that wasn't it. No, it's and I mean, I have to say I love the flappy paddle. Any chance you get to drive a car with something like that, it's so much more fun than having the gears and things like that. But no, so that's the thing. If you have an LFA, mind you, when you get your chance to get you won't be thinking about gears, isn't it? It just goes and goes and goes. But no, that's the thing. So what is in the in terms of what you're allowed to tell us? What are your plans for the next few months then? Have you been more races with the Hublot Series? How many races has that got in the championship?
So there's kind of 4 rounds of this first bracket. The top 12 get promoted into like the final stage of the season. So we've got 3 rounds left of that. So Zandvoort, Nürburgring, and then Spa. And then we've also got we've got the SimGrid World Cup, which is kind of like our I guess like endurance series throughout the year. So we've just had the 12 hours of Bathurst 2 weeks ago. We're getting ready for the 24 hours of Spa at the end of this month. And then we've got, I think it's Suzuka thereafter or something like that. So yeah, plenty of racing to be doing, plenty of endurance racing and sprint racing as well, which is awesome. And it'll just be about trying to stay awake and driving fast and try not to crash.
That's the thing, isn't it? You used our you managed to fit it all in there. How do you do a 24-hour race on a sim race like that? Because obviously you have to take breaks and things like that. And I think there's limits on YouTube, isn't it, as to what they can stream in one go? Is it like 12 hours and then you kind of start again? Or how does it work to be able to put something like that together?
Yeah, it does require a lot. We've got a huge team. So I think in terms of commentators alone, we've got between 8 and 10 guys that will be commentating the full 24 hours. The plan is really that in terms of like from the production side of stuff, we'll run 4 6-hour streams is kind of how it works. So, the start overnight and then kind of the morning after area. And overnight between sort of 1 and 6, it's probably going to be quite quiet. It's going to try and emulate the Nürburgring 24-hour live stream. So where it's really quiet at nighttime, there's not going to be a lot going on. There'll be track cameras and you can watch the cars, but that'll kind of be it. And then outside of that, there'll obviously be plenty of excitement and drama and all sorts. And as drivers, obviously, we'll take it in turns with our stints. I think with our team, the plan is to have 2 guys do the daytime and 2 guys do the nighttime. So that should be quite good fun. And I've done quite a few before, and they're a really good experience and really rewarding at the end. We had, talking to Jimmy Broadbent, we had him racing in the SimGrid a couple of weeks ago, and one of his famous sayings is that, sim racing isn't real, but the competition is. And I think after 24 hours, that it couldn't ring any more true than what he said. So,
well, that sounds fantastic. And to anyone who's watching there tonight who would like to get involved in the SimGrid, what do you do? How would you start? You're the man who runs it all there. How would you just go to the simgrid.com, is it? Or they've got the website there, and then in turn they just sign up, and then they obviously need to make sure they've got a Assetto Corsa for PC, and then they can join like that.
That is, I couldn't say it any better than myself. Yeah, just make sure you go into the simgrid.com. There's plenty of races there. Get yourself signed up. We've got plenty of events, either endurance races, single races, you name it, any car track combination. Get yourself signed up. We're a friendly bunch, and you'll get the opportunity to race with some really cool, fun people and kind of start your sim racing journey or continuing it, depending on where you are.
Fantastic. Well, that's great. Well, we've been going there for nearly 45 minutes, so we'll probably call it a day on that one. But it's been fantastic to find out what you're doing and how it's all going, and really the excitement of sim racing, and especially with the SimGrid being an amazing championship and really a fantastic sim opportunity for people. I'm sure it will continue to go from strength to strength. And it's always great to have you on the show. I really appreciate you putting time aside for that, for us to do it. Now, I did say that it looks like the intro that we put in at the start, unfortunately, wasn't seen because I think we weren't actually live. So we're learning as we go. So before we finish, I will put on the intro as requested by a few of our viewers early on. So here is our special intro, which gives us all the information about the Car Sim and Race Driver Show. So we'll be back in about 30 seconds. Here we are. I think hopefully it worked that time. But so that's our new intro for the show. But George, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show tonight. And I really wish you all the best in your role there at the SimGrid and seeing it flourish. And I'm sure it's going to be phenomenal. And no doubt we'll hear as things grow and develop as to how well it's done. And hopefully you can get a big title sponsor. And that will really kind of take it on, and it'll be even bigger, because I can see this going on TV and being, with everything that happens on YouTube, the best stuff ends up on television as well. So you just never know what you can do. And I think in a year's time, I'm sure we'll see some amazing results, and there'll be a few people there with the trophies, maybe yourself included, winning races, even though you're technically staff. So I'm sure there'll be some contractual things that maybe say, "Oh, sorry, you can't do that." But no, it's been fantastic to have you on the show. Are there any last words you would like to give as tips of the trade as a great sim racer as yourself to those watching?
You put me on the spot here. I don't think there's any wise words. Just, thank you as always, Hugh, for having us on. It's always a pleasure, and hopefully we'll be able to see you join us at SimGrid and do some races. That'd be awesome. Just thank you for having us on as always.
Fantastic. Well, our next show will be on Monday, where it's Fat Man in a cheap sim, which will be at 9 o'clock this Monday night, and we'll do some more lobby racing, maybe a little bit on GT Sport, but soon we will be going to ACC and trying to do some live races on that as well. But to everyone who's watching, thank you very much. It's fantastic to have you on board, and take care. Have a great weekend, and we will see you very, very soon. Drive fast and try not to crash. Bye just now.